Alright, ladies and gentlemen, acting Relic back here on my Skyrim adventure. Time to go to Bleak Falls Barrow, grab the Golden Claw, and also head towards Whiterun. There you go.
You picked a bad time to get lost, friend.
One thing that I didn't point out, I switched up my armor set. I'm now wearing mage hood that I found Helgund and the armor I acquired. Ring. Has the iron boots on. I'm wearing the hood because it gives me just a boost on magicka, and at this point in the game, you really need it, pretty much. Man, I remember seeing Bleak Falls Barrow in one of the very first previews of what Skyrim's gameplay was gonna be. And I thought, whoever's on the art team went to town.
I'll kill you if I have to.
The size of structure that they could. Because all the dungeons in Oblivion basically boil down to small forts or cave-like mines, and it just became very repetitive. All simplistic. Whereas the very first dungeon in the game is possibly one of the best. Now, I'd argue the one that surpasses it is the dungeon you have to go through in the Mage Questline. where you have to fight. I think the very first room you get into, you have to fight an undead dragon. And then there's a side part to that one, or there's an opposite one it's a maze. Anyways. Sneak in here. Sadly, I don't have the range yet to do that. One out. The other out. I believe, yeah. Gold, more arrows. Gold, lockpick, arrow. Gold, iron ingot. Leave that. Plus, I just like how when you pass through spider webs, break up into small little pieces. I think that's a really... And, like, level design wise, this isn't a very complex dungeon, but it's got more space and more character to the way it moves and the way it's contoured and stuff. And you can actually, with these kinds of dungeons, you could believe that this was once something else. Where with Oblivion's, it was kind of just, yeah, it looks like it's always. Snake. Believe that should be. Torch. Now they put not nearly as much importance on torches because in Oblivion you didn't need to. If you didn't have a torch, you wouldn't be able to make it through certain dungeons because it's just too damn dark. Oh wow, already Orcish Warhammer. Really far along. It's very interesting. I don't believe I've ever had that happen to me. Okay, where are you? I know there's... Jesus. That is also the reason I don't play horror games on this channel, is because even normal things jumping out at me causes me to jump. So having horror things jump out at me would be even worse. fires a really good, pretty good deterrent again. Great sword.
Get me out of here.
What's up?
It's coming loose. I can feel it.
I think this was, it was with the Bleak Falls Barrow preview that they also showed off what the new, glass longsword was gonna look like. And for anyone who has played Oblivion, they know that the glass longsword is one of the better quality longswords, and it's one of the cooler designs because it's essentially just a jagged piece of glass garnered by a couple like leather wrapped handle, like just a leather wrapped handle essentially. In this one it's styled more in a that the glass is a much lighter green and more like leaves. And of course they showed off the Draugr, how that looks. I like the Draugr. They're a cool enemy, and I like how they have tier systems of how powerful they are. Anyways. But they have tier systems where there's just different, they each one that comes along has a different armor set and kind of weapon, and by the end you run into Draugr that it can even use the power of the voice against you. And it's a tremendous upgrade from the just plain undead that you see in Oblivion, where they just, well, they're zombies. They just wander towards you. That's all they do. And I think there are zombies in this game. It's been a while since I played this game. But like Oblivion zombies were never threatening in the slightest. They just sort of meandered towards you, and you hit them a couple times and they fell over and stuff. That fireball. Good job, skeleton. Locked. Up. Single gold. Excellent. Thank you. Now I remember originally playing this Restless Undead was the very first guy where I was like, man, this game's difficulty system is very different from Oblivion's, because Oblivion's was just this bar that you move back and forth. You scaled it all the way to the left to be incredible. Oh. It is indeed. If you wanted to be super easy, scale all the way to the right. If you want it harder, that sort of thing. But going back to it now, that guy's not so bad, but I guess. Then again, pretty much playing anything after Dark Souls, that wasn't so bad. If I make a bunch of allusions to Oblivion, it's just because I find it interesting how it changed from Oblivion over to Skyrim, because Oblivion was the fantasy Western RPG that caused the West to cause people to understand, oh, this is what this can be like. We already had all those different ones that were old, PC only ones, or Japanese made ones, but we never had those big ones that were a big push that really set the world on fire. Like, I know Morrowind and Daggerfall existed beforehand, but they just didn't. I don't think they did either the numbers or just the big explosion of, oh my god, what is this thing of Western fantasy games that Oblivion did. Like, I've heard Morrowind's quite a good game, and there's a lot of good things in it, especially certain spells that were removed for Oblivion. But Oblivion was the one that just really blew up the entire thing. Anyways, back to my point. Like, I've played a fair amount of both, and I just find it interesting because there's a lot of things that I really liked about Oblivion that weren't ported over to Skyrim, and there's a lot of things that Skyrim improved upon. One thing that I'll say I wish I both agree with and disagree with that Skyrim has is this thing where when you clear a dungeon, all the enemies don't come back, which in a realistic sense makes sense, because obviously you're not going to have the exact same enemies coming back to life when you go to bed and sleep for 24 hours and reset the day. That should not happen. However, it makes the game a little more difficult in its loot gathering purposes, where Oblivion, if you got the Mehrunes Razor DLC and you got to a certain particular level, set that game up, dial it up 1 or 2 difficulty levels, and just kept resetting that, you could farm that thing for gold like crazy. I went from, I think, 20,000 to 200,000 in maybe 2 hours or so of playing that thing. Anyways, back to it. Now, I remember seeing this at the preview event, and I thought that is the smartest way of doing puzzles, because I think Skyrim puzzles make a lot more sense, because it's look at your environment and look at it carefully and think about it, and think about the other pieces in the environment. With the golden key, it's like, okay, I have this key. What happens if I look at the key? Oh, we see bear, butterfly, owl. And on the door, we see the tumblers of these three. So you set them up. Like so. And then just insert your claw. And I always thought that when you get triple owl like that, it's the mechanism with some magical fortitude within it saying, oh, you are wise, you may pass, kind of thing. Now, that bad effect is one thing I also wanted to bring up. They only use that for this dungeon, because it was this designed to be, oh, check out the very first dungeon of the game, look how good it looks, kind of thing. But they never use it again. It's kind of disappointing. And force, the first of force. Come on, let me hit you. Head, legs. Stone, silver, copper. I'll take it just to have it. I remember when that guy, I think they patched it in later, but he used to have the full top class Draugr set, where he looked like the Draugr overlords with the cool horned helmets, and he had a great sword. And it was this big show off to say, this is the kind of enemy you can expect as a boss at the end of stages like that. And I don't know if they changed it or if that's something I have in my memory and I'm not sure. But I remember fighting a guy wielding a two-handed here, not a guy with an axe. Anyways, out of here. But like, going back to what I said about dungeon design, it's like, this is very good, and like, it's a slight serpentine pattern with a two-stage system for a dungeon. That makes a lot of sense. And I say serpentine pattern because your entrance is not also your exit. There is an exit independent of the entrance. Whereas pretty much every single dungeon that you encounter in Oblivion reworks it so that it's a circular pattern where you return to your entrance. So you can it's designed where in a lore and actuality spectrum of it, that's not very good, I would say. But when you think about it in a sense of, I need to do these dungeons to get equipment, loot, equipment and experience, and possibly other things, it makes a lot of sense, because it's do this circular loop several times and you'll have all the equipment and all the experience that you need for whatever you're trying to get to.